Well, apparently we don't have enough criminals, terrorists and rapists here in Europe. We do have quite a few, but unfortunately it's not enough for our politicians' liking. So we're having to import them wholesale from the Muslim third world, which, being what it is, has plenty to spare. Of course, along with the crime, the terrorism and the rape, we are also importing the religion of Islam, which is followed in the main by millions of people from an already violent authoritarian culture who've been taught from birth that their religion must rule the world by force if necessary, that non-Muslims are inferior to them, that women exist to be used by men, that little girls can be married to and raped by grown men, that Jews are the eternal enemy, and that all homosexuals should be killed. So, yeah, let's flood our emancipated liberal society with millions of those people and see what happens. Let's keep an open mind. Let's open ourselves up to the most brutal, predatory culture on earth and let in hordes of unemployable, mostly male, fighting-age welfare parasites who hate us and have no intention of integrating. What's the worst that could happen? Of course, we mustn't generalise about men who've all been raised in the same violent, misogynistic rape culture. We have to assume that the moment they set foot in Europe, they magically develop civilised liberal values like us, or we'll be racists. And when they lie about their age and pretend to be children, we have to take them at their word and put them in with our children, because that's the kind of people we are in Europe, spineless, irresponsible morons. We love to signal our virtue at literally any cost. And we're so terribly proud of the fact that we don't discriminate, even when we should. So Islamic terrorists can just walk right in along with everybody else, as 6 of the Paris jihad attackers did. They walked into Europe as refugees, then made their way freely to where they wanted to go and started killing people. Border security? Oh no, that would send the wrong message. Don't come. And we can't do that because they've been invited. And they think they're coming to conquer us too. They really do. It sounds absurd to us, but it's what they've been taught all their lives by their violent supremacist religion, so why would they not believe it? And they keep telling us too, but we don't want to hear it because it's just too outlandish an idea for us to take seriously, like 9/11 or something. Besides, we're afraid that if we do take it seriously, somebody might call us a racist, and that's far too high a price for us to pay not to sell out our children and grandchildren's future, so we're just going to sit back like beached whales and let it happen, for the sake of inclusion. The countries in the south of Europe are getting the worst of the invasion, and Italy is at bursting point because left-wing activist boats are being allowed to pick up migrants from traffickers and act as a virtual illegal ferry service to Europe. If the Italian government had any regard at all for its own people or for the rule of law, all those boats would be seized and scuttled and everybody on them thrown in jail. But the Italian government doesn't want to stop the invasion. It wants other countries to reopen their borders and accept their share of the nightmare. And, of course, the European Union agrees, but some of its newer members, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, are not so keen. It seems they don't want their societies flooded with criminals, terrorists and rapists, and they're seriously embarrassing everyone else with their unfashionable common sense. They can see the explosion of crime and violence in countries that have opened their borders, and they feel that it would be a betrayal of their own people, now there's a novel idea, to let this poison into their society. They don't want their country to be a place where women and girls are afraid to go out on their own at night, where it seems like every week there's another gang rape by men who got into the country by pretending to be children. They don't want their country riddled with police no-go zones controlled by Muslim gangs, or their prisons full of terrorists and rapists they can't deport. They don't want Saudi-funded mosques preaching sedition, violence and hate, while everyone else's right to free speech is truncated to a virtual stump of itself. And they really don't want any cultural Marxism because they have a recent history of being governed by actual Marxism, and they can smell the evil here. They know it's rotten. They also know, what the rest of us have known for some time now, that being governed by open borders politicians is like travelling with a suicidal bus driver on a mountain road. It's obvious now that if we don't get somebody else at the wheel, and soon, we are all going over a cliff. They've shown that they can't be trusted with our safety and security, and they're not persuaded by evidence or reason. They're determined to press on with this folly regardless, like religious zealots who believe they're acting in the cause of a greater good that transcends the wishes of the people who elected them, if anyone did elect them. They know very well that this invasion is making Europe more dangerous, especially for women, and less civilized, but they think it's a price worth paying, as long as somebody else pays it. So, if your child is murdered by an Islamic terrorist, or if your daughter is raped by an illegal migrant, they'll murmur their regrets, but privately they'll consider it collateral damage. The important thing, the progressive thing, is to merge the two cultures, the civilized one and the barbarous one. Of course, they know that civilized people will instinctively reject barbarism. Therefore, civilized people need to be re-educated to believe that barbarism is as valid as civilization and worthy of equal respect, or you'll be a criminal, which is pretty much where we are now. You see, politicians don't like having the ugly truth pointed out to them when they're trying so hard to ignore it, because it shows them up for the unprincipled invertebrates they are. So here in Europe, they've simply made the truth illegal because they can. We don't have a First Amendment here, so free speech means whatever they say it means, and that means we don't have free speech at all. It seems we got rid of the Iron Curtain only to replace it with an iron lid. Because several European countries have now prosecuted their own citizens as criminals for expressing the wrong opinion about the mass illegal Muslim invasion that's being forced upon us. Earlier this year, a man in Austria was sentenced to 5 months in prison for expressing the opinion that Islam is at war with the West, when it's painfully clear to everyone that Islam is very much at war with the West. Only a fool or a judge could deny it. Islam is our sworn enemy, and that's not me saying that, it's Islam saying it. Read the Quran and see for yourself. It's a virtual declaration of war against the rest of humanity. There's no ambiguity about it. It's all about slaying and subduing the infidel. There's no love thy neighbour, no golden rule, no seek the kingdom of heaven within. It's all about conquering and killing unbelievers, waging war against the world and shoving Islam down everyone's throat. That's what the terrorists are trying to do, because that's what their scripture tells them to do, and we are reminded of that every time police in Europe find a military-grade arms cache hidden near a mosque. You know, I get emails from India telling me that they've had to put up with this for hundreds of years, and that we have no idea what trouble we're storing up for ourselves if we let this thing grow. Islam despises everything that we are supposed to stand for. Democracy, free speech, civil rights. It would abolish them all given half a chance. The places on this earth where Islam dominates are black holes of ignorance and cruelty. It stamps out freedom wherever it gets the upper hand, and non-Muslims are always persecuted because that is what the religion demands. As an ideology, it's so absurd and inhuman, it would fall apart if it wasn't held together by the threat of violence. So it's no surprise that it gives its followers a mandate to conquer humanity by force. It has nothing else to offer. The only reason it hasn't conquered us in the West is because we are stronger. If Islam was stronger, we would all be Muslims now or dead. And we have no excuse for not knowing that, and no excuse for not acting upon it. Thomas Jefferson knew it more than 200 years ago when he asked the Arab ambassador why they attacked and enslaved people who had done them no harm. And he was told that it was because the Quran instructs Muslims to wage war against everyone who does not submit to Islam and to make slaves of prisoners. He was also told that every Muslim who dies in this cause will go to paradise. Ring any bells? So this jihad terror insanity that we see today is nothing new. It's not some sudden aberration. It's not based on a misunderstanding or wrong interpretation of scripture. It is not the corruption of a great religion. It is Islam, and it has always been Islam. And if we don't start pushing back against it, as we've had to do throughout its history, it will prevail like an incoming tide, because we have opened the door to it now in a way that has never happened before, and we are sleepwalking into disaster. We've opened our free and liberal society to the most backward, repressive, brutal and predatory culture on the planet. A culture that belongs in another century and on another planet, and a culture that thinks it's coming to take over, so it has no respect for the law. And we give it every encouragement too, by censoring ourselves and by backing away from it, mumbling nonsense about tolerance and diversity to people who don't know the meaning of those words and who laugh at us openly. We must be insane. When do you think we'll come to our senses and stop re-electing the criminals who are imposing this nightmare on Europe? When the situation is irreversible? When Europe resembles the Muslim third world, with violent crime rampant, police outnumbered and quitting in droves as they are already in Sweden?